Before we get started with the video today, guys, I want to let you viewers out there know that only a small fraction of you guys currently watching are actually subscribed to my channel, so make sure to smash that subscribe button for instant updates about videos that I release and other announcements, and also smash that like button to help my channel out. Enjoy the video. Yo, what is up guys? It is Samool here, back with another tier list, and today I'm going to be updating the 5-star RGB PvE tier list, guys. So basically I'm making some changes to the tier list. I think some units I either rated a bit too highly or a bit too lowly, and I'm going to be updating it and just basically compiling it into this video so you guys can have a better idea of how strong units are. So keep in mind guys, this is a PvE only tier list, there's no PvP, and it is only for 5-star units that are Earth, Fire, and Ice, including Limited and Collab. Now without further ado, let's get started on the tier list. So at the Tamarinne tier, because she does deserve her own tier, is Tamarinne. So Tamarinne's kit is just really overloaded, guys. I'm sure you guys have heard a million times from me, but I think Tamarinne is just so busted. I cannot believe Smilegate released a unit like this so early into Epic 7's release. But yeah, she has a full AoE strip, she has a force dual attack, she has a heal, she has a attack buff, a CR push, a full cleanse. Just everything you want. Not even just in a healer, but in a unit. So very, very powerful. The only thing that she's missing is a defense break, but she has an attack buff, so it doesn't really matter, right? It's a very, very powerful unit. You can take her into so many areas of content, guys. Like every expedition, Abyss, Raid, Golem Hunt, Asmonak Hunt. So there's so many areas of content, so that's why she's in her own tier, guys. If you don't have her, pick her up as soon as you can, either through, like a selector ticket or through her banner. Or if she's on the Mystic banner, right, you have to pick her up. She is just so OP, and she will make your PvE life so much easier, no matter what stage you are at in the game. And after the Tamarinne here, we're going to have the S tier units, guys. So I'm going to be ranking them left to right for the most part, except for D tier. D tier is kind of like in a jumble because, yeah, they're all not that great. But everything else, left to right, guys, is going to be strongest to worst. After Tamarinne, starting in the S tier, guys, we have SSB. So SSB is a very, very strong AoE DPSer. She has the AoE defense break, AoE S3 that has unbuffable and unhealable, and can also land single target debuffs on enemies, which will make her do more damage as well. She's very good in Wyvern one-shot, Asmonak, Raid, Abyss. You just can't really use her in Expedition, but the damage she outputs is like insane. And there are a lot of bosses that do AoE, which will trigger her S2 or Batback counterattack a lot more often. So she's very, very powerful at clearing bosses that have adds with them. Also, she has a damage share in her S2, which makes her very, very tanky. Basically, whatever units in the front will take a percent of damage instead of her. So that makes her very tanky, so you can build her super DPS heavy, and then you don't have to really worry about her tank stats. That's why she's in number 1, guys. She's a very, very powerful unit. You should pull her if you can. Pull her next year. If you don't have her, she will just carry you in PvE content. Even late game players, you can take her into like auto hell raid as well, and one-shot Wyvern obviously. So very, very powerful. Right after SSB we have Landy. So Landy's another ranger. She's like a CO Rina but on crack. She has a no debuff S1, so it makes her very good against bosses that have a debuff cap. She also CR pushes herself. She has stacking attack, and she has an AoE attack that penetrates defense, gives speed buff to everyone, and CR pushes. It's just insane kit for, even in PvP, but in PvE she's just really good in a lot of areas of content. You can basically take her everywhere. She's in Expedition, you can use her in Raid, like Abyss, and a lot of hunts. Just very powerful, and I think her banner is coming around in a few months, so you should try to pick her up if you can. She's just very powerful in both PvE and PvP. Then after Landy we have the Queen of Wyvern herself. We have Sigrid. So the reason why she's S tier, guys, is because she is so good at Wyvern Hunt. That's all she's really used in for PvE, but Wyvern is so important. It'll be 80% of your farming. So if Sigrid is that good at Wyvern by far, she has to be S tier, guys. She just makes her gear farming a lot more easier. And then after Sigrid we have Dizzy. So Dizzy's really good in Abyss Force notably, but she's also usable in Wyvern and in Raid. Just be careful that she has so many debuffs. You can't really take her against bosses that have a debuff cap, but she really neuters bosses with her S3. And even her S2 to extend the debuffs. So very, very powerful. You can even pair with Kiris or Spectre Tenebria to extend their poisons on the boss to make them take so much damage. Then next we have Luluka. So Luluka is a very powerful defense breaker and stripper. She also has utility in her S2 to buff the team with a defense buff and a barrier, so she makes her team like pseudo tanky as well. So very support heavy DPS unit, but her damage is actually pretty decent as well. Her base attack is pretty high, and she has stacking attack in her S3, so it makes her a very powerful damage dealer that has a pretty decent defense break with her S1. It's a 2-turn 65% chance defense break, and yeah, just a very powerful unit. S tier, you can take her in like Asmonak, like Raid, Wyvern even, just very powerful in Expedition as well. So just a really good unit, and if her banner comes around, she's pretty good to pull for if you're struggling in any of those areas of content. Then after Luluka, we have Issaria. So Issaria is very powerful, especially with Tamarinne. You can reset her idle form right away, making her Tamarinne's best friend. But even without Tamarinne, she's still an S tier unit. She has 2 defense breaks, one in her S1 and one in her S3. She has a cooldown reset, which can reset the cooldown of anyone on her team, so it can be really good with units like, I don't know, Dizzy to like extend DOS even more. Sigrid, you can S3 twice. Just a lot of cheesy strategies you can use with her. She also has her defense break in her S3, which is a 100% chance, which will strip all buffs and also give you give the enemy defense break and unbuffable. This works on like Queen as well and Asmonak, so if you put unbuffable on them, they actually can't get their Berserk, so it's actually really nice for those areas of content. But even in other areas like Abyss and like other raid bosses, normal Banshee, Asmonak, very powerful, guys. Really S tier unit. I really recommend picking her up if you can as well, and she's really waifu, guys, so bonus points for me. Then after Issaria, last on S tier, we have Lilius. A lot of people have been hating on Lilius lately, maybe not hating, but I guess rating her a bit lowly, but I still think she's S tier, guys. Even with Aros out, she does do stuff differently than Aros. Her S1 is a forced dual attack, not forced, but random dual attack, but it's still really nice because if you bring 2 DPS with her, like 2 really powerful DPS, like say like Landy, Luluka, or like Landy and like Siorina, you're mostly going to bring one of your strong DPS instead of your healer, and you just do so much more damage, making Lilius kind of like a pseudo DPS. She also has a full cleanse, which is really nice in PvE because a lot of bosses have a lot of debuffs you need to cleanse. So very solid knight. She's also a Aureus holder, so she can reduce the damage your party can take. She's a very powerful unit. I do understand that Aros is also very strong, but Aros is also S tier, guys. If he was a 5-star, he would be S tier as well, so don't worry. I still think Lilius is S tier in her own right. And now into the A tier units, guys. So we will have Ruana at number 1. So Ruana is a very powerful unit, borderline S tier, guys. Very good in Hell Raid bosses, especially if you want to run them auto. She's good in some Abyss floors. She's good in Ice Expedition. Basically, her main mechanic is that whenever there's a counter attack or dual attack, which a lot of bosses will have, especially counter attacks, she'll actually heal her party and CR push them. Also, what happens is that when she needs to do a lot of burst healing, she'll S3 and also give revive buff, making a lot of runs more stable in auto runs, especially auto Hell Raid, because that revive buff can come in clutch sometimes. So very powerful unit, and that is why I think she is at the top of A tier. And after Ruana, we have Bellona. So Bellona is a very good DPS unit. She has a strip, defense break, very powerful. Her S1 also has a Daydream Joker effect built in, which is mainly used in like Banshee one-shots, Asmonak, like some raid and Abyss floors. It's a very powerful unit. I think her banner just ran as of this video, so she's very strong. You guys might have her. Most of you guys probably have her. I did recommend to pick her up if you were a newer player, but she is a very powerful PvE unit, and she will carry you in early game for sure. She just starts to fall off a little bit later on in the game. You start phasing her out a bit, but even then you can still use it if you want, so that is why she is A tier. And then after Bellona, we have the free connection unit, Bomb Model Kana. So Bomb Model Kana is a very powerful DPS unit. She's like Ball and Sazan kind of, but no debuffs, so makes her a little bit better. She has crazy damage, AoE damage. She also has a speed buff and attack buff for herself, so very powerful. You can take her in like Asmonak, Earth Expedition. She's very strong in both, so that is why she is A tier. After Kana, we have Ravi. So Ravi doesn't really shine in one particular area of content for PvE, in my opinion, but she's just really well-rounded, and you can bring her into basically anywhere, like Abyss, Raid, Adventure, like even Golem and Asmonak. Probably not Asmonak, actually, but she's very strong. She's very self-sustainable. She can even frontline for you if you put her on counter set, and she'll be able to sustain herself up pretty well. Her damage is very nice, and she has some AoE. It's actually like a huge nuke, like a huge AoE nuke, but it is conditional. So yeah, very powerful general purpose unit. Not really a superstar in any area of content, but just really strong in like a lot of areas of content. And after Ravi, we have Vildred, guys. So Green Vildred, or Green RB, as some people call him, is a pretty decent PvE unit. He used to be one of the best selective summon units in the game, but times have changed with Sigrid. People are starting to recommend Sigrid now, but Vildred was my selective summon unit, so I do have a soft spot for him. But he's very good in like Asmonak Hunt, Banshee, can use him in Raid, even in like some early Abyss floors. The thing is, with RB coming out, it's hard to place him like anywhere higher than this, just because RB, there's some areas RB can't do better than Vildred. Like Vildred's definitely better in A13 than RB, but RB is just like better everywhere else. So yeah, it's hard to place Villager too high, but I do think he's a solid PvE unit. And then next on the list in A tier we have Ball and Sazan. So Ball and Sazan, I do like him a lot in PvE. The only thing is he has a lot of debuffs, that's his only downside, but his damage is not bad. And he has a defense break, speed down, and he has so much AoE damage. You can even dog walk with him as well. So I think he's very powerful. You can use him in Earth Expedition, Asmonak, you can use him in like Abyss Floors as well because of his poison. So pretty decent unit, pretty well rounded. I think he's just a little bit underrated in my opinion, but still very strong for PvE. Now next we have Luna. So Luna, this is the Luna after the buffs on September 2nd that is happening. So if you're watching this after September 2nd, this is the current iteration of Luna. If you're watching before, it is the one coming up after the September 2nd patch note. So Luna is a very strong single target DPS. She has built-in crit chance and defense, so it makes her very tanky and easier to build. She has a pretty hard hitting S1, but the only bad thing is it is RNG. But if you soul burn it, there is no RNG, it'll be the max damage. So in manual play, she's very powerful. Her S3 will also defense break and penetrate defense, making her a very strong single target nuker. She works similar to Siorina, but I still do think Siorina is slightly better, although it is very close. Luna does outshine her in like Fire Expedition, but Siorina is probably a little bit better in Abyss and Raid, although it is very close, guys. And now getting into the B tier units, guys. First, we have Kairon. So Kairon used to be a monster in PvP like a year ago. He's fallen off in the PvP meta, but he's actually always been good in PvE as well. People just kind of overshadowed how good he was in PvE with his PvP strengths, but Kairon's actually a pretty decent like damage dealer, especially AoE damage dealer. He also has a attack buff in his S3 for himself, which actually is like a single target nuke, and his immortality in his S2, making him pretty tanky, like pseudo tanky, when you have like a turn for your Soul Weaver to heal him up before he dies. So yeah, he is B tier, so he is like usable, but not as good as like other AoE DPS options. After Kairon, we have Diane. So Diane is a pretty decent Soul Weaver. The only thing is she doesn't heal that much, but the thing is she has an attack buff and pretty good CR like pushing on herself, so she can CR boost herself pretty often and turn cycle pretty fast and bury her team as well. The only thing is she is lacking healing, so if you're going to bring her as a Soul Weaver spot, it's kind of weird, right, because she doesn't heal that much. You're better off bringing like a dedicated healer like Tamarinne or a Momo, and then you just bring like an attack buff in one of your DPS slots. Then next we have Tenebria. So Tenebria is pretty strong as a AoE damage dealer. Her S2 is a AoE attack, her S3 is a defense break and speed down. Very powerful, especially in like Earth Expedition and even like Asmonak if you are careful with the debuffs. But the thing is, like, she doesn't do too much damage. Her damage modifiers are a bit low because she's kind of meant to be played as like a control unit. So for that reason, she is in B tier. After Tenebria, we have Charlotte. So Charlotte is going to be like a budget Kairon in PvE, I'd say. Pretty similar in her S1 is AoE, but the thing is she doesn't have an attack buff, and she is going to die a little bit more, although she does have like that defense buff and the CR push. But the thing is, like, she won't get CR pushed or defense buff that much because people don't hit her, right? In PvE, people won't, or bosses won't focus her because you're gonna put her in the back anyways. So you're mostly relying on AoE attacks. So yeah, she's not terrible, but she's okay. The only thing is her S1. Yeah, her S1's pretty strong, but I think Kairon is a little bit stronger in that regard. He does a little bit more damage just because of his attack buff. Next we have Cerise. So Cerise is actually pretty decent in PvE, especially if you have like Song of Stars or Miss Confile. I think you need those on her for PvE, because what you do is you S1, you try to proc the target or defense break, and then you bring one of your DPS or whatever unit you bring along with you, and it does pretty decent damage. Also, speed down is pretty decent, and restrict is pretty decent against some bosses, especially in like Dark Expedition, right? So yeah, pretty decent unit. I put her in B tier. You can use her as like a defense breaker with Miss Confile, and she's not that bad. Then next we have the new collab unit, Ram, the free unit. She's actually pretty decent. We haven't seen too much of her, but she's pretty powerful in Banshee, pretty powerful in Ice Expedition as well. So I think she's actually like a pretty decent single target DPS as well. It's just that we haven't seen too much of her. But yeah, in those two areas of content, very powerful. You could probably bring her into other areas of content as well if you need a single target defense breaker. Then after Ram, we have Kisei. So Kisei is like a little bit worse than Luna, so that's why she's a tier below. They kind of do the same thing, and they're like a single target DPS. The thing is, like, Kisei does a little bit less damage because Luna's easier to build with the crit chance on her S2, so she'll be able to have more stats. And also Luna's S3, since it penetrates defense and defense break, has more utility and more damage. So Kisei's kind of just stuck in PvE, just spamming S1, to be honest. Her S1 does a lot of damage, but I think Luna does a little bit more than her overall in the long run. Then after Kisei, we have another ice unit, Crow. So Crow is a very strong PvP unit, but in PvE, he's not that great. All he does really is defense buff. His S3 is okay, but it doesn't have the same effect as in PvP, where it just like one-shots or deletes a unit, right? In PvE, it's kind of like a nice chunk of damage, but that's pretty much it. Also, his S1 provoke is not that great compared to some other knights in PvE. Next, we have Yuna, a free connection unit, that's similar to Bomb Model Kana. A lot of AoE damage, also has a good attack and speed buff built into her S2. The only reason she's an A tier or higher is because actually she's kind of clunky to use, so her attack and speed buff on her S2 actually doesn't give her an extra turn, so she buffs herself and then like pretty much wastes a turn, right? Also, her damage modifiers are pretty low, so she doesn't do that much damage, but yeah, her attacks all are AoE, so she's pretty decent in A13 and some raid bosses, and even like Fire Expedition as well, because she can see her push with her S1 as well. Next we have Litika. So Litika is actually not bad. Like, some people think she's only good in Abyss for CR pushing back one of the bosses. I forgot what boss it was, but her single target, if you use it as a single target DPS, she's actually not that bad in my opinion. Especially if you put her in like a CR like comp with like Shuri and like Kitty Clarissa. Like, there's a guy on YouTube that does that, but it's pretty cool. You should check it out. Litika's pretty decent though in those comps, so that's why she's in B tier. Valencia, so Valencia is like okay. She has a full strip and defense buff on her S3. That's why I think she's low B tier, just because of that. Her S1 is a defense break chance, I believe, so it's pretty decent as well. The only thing is like it relies on her getting hit to get her Mind's Eye or her second proc on her S1. So you kind of need to like have her get hit, so you can put her in the front, I guess, but to do that you have to make her a bit tanky. So you have to be a little bit careful. So yeah, just her Mind's Eye activating is kind of like the same problem in PvE as PvP, because it is very important to her kit. And then next we have Destin, a pretty decent Soul Weaver. She has good cleansing and healing capabilities, just raw healing. The only reason she isn't any higher is because all she does is heal. She doesn't res, she doesn't attack buff, doesn't strip, or yeah, she doesn't do any of that like other Soul Weavers or support units, so that's why she's in B tier. Soul is a Guilty Gear free unit. He's okay as a single target DPS. He used to be really strong, like A tier, maybe even S tier, like early when he first came out. But he's kind of fallen a bit off, so I'm going to put him in B tier. You can use him in like Golem and like Earth Expedition. He's like okay, but not that great overall. So Charles is also in B tier. Charles is pretty decent. He has a full strip in his S2, which he can proc from his S1. He also has an AoE attack and a attack buff. I might even actually have to put him a bit higher, because he is pretty useful in like Banshee one-shots. He's pretty useful in like Hell Queen. So if I put him a little bit higher, honestly, I put him like, I guess like above Destina. Actually, probably like around here, I'd say is probably best to move him to, because he does have some good uses. Like, I even use Charles right now as my Banshee one-shotter. You can even use him as Stripper and Queen if you really need more dispels. But that's pretty much it for B tier, guys. B tier units are still very usable. They're like still above average, or about average, I'd say. They're not as strong as A or S tier, so you don't want to use them over A or S tier units. But if you are lacking a certain like role, like AoE DPS or support or like defense break or something, you can always slot in a B tier unit and they can do the job just fine. And now getting into the C tier units, guys. Basically units you don't really want to take into PvE if you can. At the top of C tier, we have Amelia, one of the collab ReZero units. So the reason why she's pretty low, while she's very powerful in PvP, is because her AI in PvE is just terrible. So just her kit itself also is kind of weak as well. So her S3 is like her only real healing. It's going to be an AoE heal that cleanses, right? Gives barrier as well and heals. Her S2 doesn't heal unless you soul burn it, so you have to manual play to heal. But it is still a CR push, which is nice with attack buff. And her S1 healing is pretty weak in my opinion, unless you invest like heavy moles into it and put her on like Celestine or something, but still I don't think she's like that great of a healer. And then her AI is just awful, guys. Like, she will S2 the person that is like closest to her CR bar. So whoever's next up right after her, she'll S2. She'll never like S2 like your DPS only or your highest attack DPS only. It's just whoever's next on your CR bar, which makes her like very bad in autoplay. So that's why she's in C tier, guys. Like, I was even tempted to put her like very low C tier just because of how bad her AI is and how like I don't think she's that great in PvE. I did test her a lot as well. Next, after Amelia, we have Ken. So Ken used to be very strong. The only thing is he's like only really good in like Golem now. You can even use him, I guess, in like Earth Expedition. Probably not though, because he doesn't have that much AoE. But yeah, he doesn't really see that much use. Like he's only good in like adventure, I'd say. So that's not really saying much though, because there's a lot of units good in adventure. I really think he needs buffs. Like an exclusive equipment really would be really nice for him to help him with how weak he is right now. And next we have the monster in PvP right now, Violet. The thing is, he's not that great in PvE, guys. He's just kind of like counter, so I guess you could put him in the front and hope that the boss hits him and he dodges. But what happens if you don't dodge, right? So there's RNG involved in how tanky he is, and also like he has to be like focused down to get full usage out of him. So you have to like put him in the front if you want to use him in PvE. I guess you can use him as like just a single target DPS on the side, but his main damage comes from counter attacking and CR pushing himself and getting focus. So it is kind of weird. Also, if you put him in the front, you kind of want lifesteal set as well, which you can't really farm that well early game. So yeah, that's why he's in C tier, guys. Next we have Sez. So Sez used to be a very strong selective summon unit. He's pretty bad now though. There's just so many units that do it better. You don't really need a dog walker anymore either because you have RB. But yeah, the only area of content I see him used in is like Wyvern as like a debuffer, because he has one debuff on his S1 that you could perma use. But like, why would you ever use him over like Sigurd from selective summon, right? There's only 2 slots you can take in Wyvern teams. It's either one of the DPS slots or the debuff slots, because your Furious slot is not going to Sez, right? So why would you take Sez over Alexa? She's a free-to-play unit, or even like Clarissa, also free-to-play unit. Also, Sigurd is also technically free-to-play because of selective summon. So why would you ever take him? That's why you C tier. I just can't put him in D tier because like he can still technically dog walk, I guess, and he's still technically usable in Wyvern. Next we have Ram, another collab unit, very based off counter attacks. She also has like a defense break in her S1 and attack buff in her S3. She's not like terrible, honestly. I think I should probably move her up around like above Ken for sure, now that I think about it, next to Amelia, just because like she does have a defense break, and when enemies die on the field, she's actually pretty strong. She's very good in one-shot teams though, so I think I would have to just put her in one-shot actually instead of C tier, because she's good in Wyvern one-shot, that's for sure. Just for just general purpose though, she's not that great. Next we have Ray. So Ray is like a cleanser. His healing's like but his cleansing's okay. But it's like, I put him in C tier because like A Momo is a 3-star that you get for free. That's like way better at healing and like better at cleansing, because the way Ray cleanses works is he just like cleanses with his S1, like a random debuff off like a unit, or he like S3 and cleanses everyone. And his S2 is pretty good as well, but like Momo can S2 like every turn or every other turn, and S3 soul burn full cleanses everyone basically. So why would you take him over a Momo? I don't know, so that's why he's in C tier. Next we have Araminta. So Araminta could be D tier, but she's actually like, or not D tier, B tier, but she like doesn't have that much damage. She's actually pretty good. She's an attack buff, she has a lot of AoE damage. The only thing is like, I think people just don't like her. Also like her burns are like kind of weak, right? Burns are kind of like a weak debuff unless you have like a carrot or something to detonate them. So not that powerful because of that. Other like AoE DPS units just do more damage than her. So just like raw number wise, like her damage is pretty low. But the attack buff actually is pretty nice. I was actually considering building her early game because she had a team-wide attack buff. Just for that reason. Because I kind of wanted one. So yeah, she's like, maybe you could build her because you want a attack buffer and an AoE DPS. But there's just so many better options out there that you could use. So I don't really recommend it. Like, I even think, like, Yuna is, like, a better Araminta, because both of them do a lot of AoE damage, but Yuna has the attack buff and the speed buff, and it's up way more often, and she doesn't have any debuffs on her skills, so she doesn't have to reach, what am I trying to say? She doesn't have to worry about reaching the debuff cap on bosses, where Araminta always has to worry about it, because she has so many burns. Next, we have Holiday Euphine. Suffers the same problem from Araminta, so many burns, so, like, you kind of get, it's kind of gets scary sometimes against bosses with debuff counts. Also, her S3 and S1 actually just don't do that much damage. The multipliers are pretty low, which I guess is kind of making sense though, because she does have all AoE abilities, similar to Yuna. But yeah, I wouldn't really take her in PvE. She's mostly for PvP as a Basar counter and like a Cerise F10A counter as well. But yeah, PvE not that great. And then Shu. So Shu's like good in PvP nowadays, but in PvE like still pretty weak. Just like doesn't do enough damage, and the buff she provides like isn't that great for PvE. It's mostly suited for PvP. And then now to D tier, guys. So just keep in mind, D tier units are going to be mostly not ranked. I can't really say that this unit is less garbage than this unit, because like they're so closely like bad. They're both like similarly bad that I can't like rank one higher than the other. So starting off with D tier, guys. So actually Mui I'm gonna put in one shot, because She's only really used in Banshee one-shot, and she's pretty good at it because she has 3-turn attack buff for like Baiken users, which is really easy to one-shot with. But everywhere else for Mui, she's not great because she does no damage and has too many debuffs for doing no damage and doing nothing else. And then Tywin, AoE defense break, mostly good for cleave. In PvE though, you will never take him over another support unit. Like you would rather take Amelia over Tywin. It's better. Just like anything else that can CR push or defense break is just better than him for the most part. Cecilia, PvP unit, pretty good. PvE not that great. Her decreased attack is mostly for PvP, and provoke is useless in PvE. Chloe, you can use her in Wyvern. She's only good in Wyvern. Okay, let me rephrase. She's only usable in Wyvern, but even then, you should never use her. Like, Alex is better than her in my opinion, so if you really like her there and want to make her comp around her, you can. You just have to speed tune your entire team so the nail lines up on the first turn, so it's kind of annoying to deal with, but sure. Ada, garbage unit, garbage in PvP and PvE. You need to like fix her Smilegate, like give her some buffs. There's so much RNG in her kit and it's not even that great, so please fix her. Elena, completely used in PvP as like a AoE counter to like cleave and like even control, and kind of like a good like general purpose soul weaver as well if you draft her correctly. PvE though, like she's so niche that it's like hard to use her, so not that great. Fairy Tale Tenebria, so she's like an S3 and done kind of unit, and S3 is like redirected provoke, which doesn't work in PvE, so self-explanatory, D tier in PvE. She does have a poison or S1 though, so I guess it's usable, but yeah, not usable. Cowrick, PvP unit as an opener. He did get buffs recently or changes, but those were suited towards PvP anyways. He's like an okay damage dealer, but like I don't know why you'd use him in PvE over like anyone. Like any 3-star DPS, like Seal Ren is just like way better than him. Like why would you ever use him, right? Ludwig needs buffs as well. Very niche unit, needs like invincibility buff to work. PvP not that great either. He's just super niche and not good at all like anywhere. You don't take him anywhere. Melissa only used as like a Rylet counter in PvP. PvE never used as well. Curse kind of sucks in PvE as well. Her main like debuff that she puts on, so D tier. Pavel, monster in PvP, don't get me wrong, but in PvE, not that great because he's really bursty. Yeah, his S1 does like no damage, so he just like S2, S3s, and that's his whole like damage. So yeah, not that good in PvE. Celine also very niche unit. Her kit really revolves around countering like non-attack skills, which bosses don't really have. So D tier. Haste, no damage, 2 NA debuffs. Yeah, really needs buffs. I don't know why Smilegate hates this little kid. It's kind of sad. This guy needs buffs ASAP. Xeno, this guy's from Hall of Trials. I'm gonna be completely honest. I have no idea what this guy does, but I've never seen anyone use him ever. So D tier. Ilyanov. So Ilyanov has an injury mechanic that's mostly suited for PvP. Counterattack injury mechanic, sort of like Charles, but with injury. So yeah, injury suited for PvP, guys. It doesn't really do anything in PvE, so it doesn't work at all actually. So there's no point in bringing her. More injury mechanics as well. So also going to be in D tier. Politis used as like a cleaver or cleave counter. Very powerful in PvP, but unfortunately in PvE she doesn't really do too much. I guess she's like okay because of her unbuffable debuff, but yeah, I can't really rate her that high. Bazaar, PvP opener, but does no damage, and yeah, just does no damage, and you can't really rely on CR pushing back the boss, and you don't really care about CR pushing back the boss too much anyway, so D tier. And then Senya, she's like okay, like she's not bottom of D tier, she's probably like top of D tier to be honest, but yeah, her kit's mostly suited for PvP as well. She has a lot of buffs. The damage is like okay, I guess, but yeah, mostly suited for PvP anyways. So, and at the bottom here in the teal column, we have the one-shot or the teal row. These are going to be used for one-shot. I'll go over really fast where they're used. So Baiken, Banshee one-shot, Ceremia, Golem one-shot, although you can use her as a single-shot DPS, and she's not bad. But I did put her in one-shot just to do her justice, because I would probably put her in like C or B tier, and Ceremia is waifu, so I can't. Elfel used in some one-shot comps as well. Otherwise not really used in PvE, mostly like a cleave unit. Ervalen kind of sucks, but I guess he can one-shot Banshee. Flan is used only as a Wyvern one-shotter. Lilibet also only used as a Banshee one-shotter. Vivian's actually like a B or A tier unit for PvE, but I put her in one-shot because she's like S plus tier in one-shot, like SS tier. Like she could have her own tier, just because like you need her for like Asmonak and Banshee to make the gear requirements a lot lower. So very, very nice for one-shot teams. Let me just put it in the front real quick. Next we have Euphine. So Euphine is good for Banshee one-shot as well. Ram is Wyvern one-shot, like I said, and Mew is also a Banshee one-shot attack buffer. So that's pretty much it for my PvE RGB 5-star tier list, guys, and it is updated. I'm going to try to release these like every few months, just to update the tier list and let you guys know like if anything changes with new units coming out or with new content coming out, if some units are better, because Smilegate does plan to release new content in the future as well. So I'm going to be updating these regularly, as well as like my ML and my PvP tier list as well. So expect those to come out in the future. You might see repeat videos, but they're actually going to be a bit different because I do try to, really take in the comments you guys have about units and try to take it in and incorporate it into my tier list if they make sense. So if you guys have any comments that disagree with anything, let me know down below. I actually don't mind if you guys say, what are you thinking, this unit is so good or whatever. It's fine, guys. You can say whatever. I actually am very curious what you guys think, because it's really foolish to think that this tier list is like perfect and for me to say like I know that my tier list is right, because it is an opinion and a tier list, guys. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and as always, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me out a lot, and I will see you guys next video. Goodbye.